Internet technician mocks Elon Musk in his home, but when he realized the truth, he collapsed in tears. The ancient alarm clock blared at 5:30 a.m., its harsh buzz cutting through Mike Rodriguez's restless sleep. He'd only managed to drift off 3 hours ago, after another night of worrying about bills and watching Emma's breathing through the baby monitor. His daughter hadn't had a seizure in 2 days, a small mercy. "Honey?" Sarah's tired voice came from beside him. "You need to get up. You have that fancy neighborhood route today." Mike groaned, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. Yeah, rich people and their emergency internet problems. God forbid they can't stream their shows for an hour. The floor creaked as he made his way to the bathroom, careful not to wake Emma. Their small house had seen better days. The wallpaper was peeling, and the carpet was worn thin, but it was home. Or at least it had been before medical bills started eating away at everything they had. In the bathroom mirror, Mike barely recognized himself. At 38, he looked 50. Dark circles under his eyes, more gray in his beard than brown, and worry lines etched deep into his forehead. 15 years as an internet technician had taken their toll, but the last 3 years since Emma's diagnosis had aged him the most. His phone buzzed, a text from his supervisor, Dave. "First appointment in Westlake Hills, high-priority client. Don't screw this up, Rodriguez." "When do I ever?" Mike texted back, trying to keep the bitterness out of even his written words. The kitchen was dark when he entered, but Sarah was already there, making coffee and a sandwich for his lunch. "You didn't have to get up," he said, kissing her cheek. "Couldn't sleep anyway." She handed him the coffee. "The hospital called yesterday. They want to discuss a new payment plan." Mike's hand tightened around the mug. "New payment plan? We can barely keep up with the current one." "I know. Sarah's voice cracked. "Maybe we could ask your parents again?" "They've already remortgaged their house for us. We can't ask for more." Mike took a long sip of coffee, letting the warmth steady his nerves. "I'll figure something out. Maybe Dave will give me more overtime." A small voice from the hallway made them both turn. "Daddy?" Emma stood there in her favorite unicorn pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Even half asleep, she was the most beautiful thing Mike had ever seen. Her once thick brown hair was thin now from the treatments, but her green eyes still sparkled when she smiled. "Princess, you should be sleeping," Mike said, scooping her up. She felt lighter than last week, or was he imagining it? "I heard voices," she mumbled into his shoulder. "Are you going to fix more computers today?" Mike held her tighter. "That's right, baby. Daddy's going to help people with their internet, so they can watch all their shows and play their games." "Like my iPad games? The ones from the hospital?" Mike and Sarah exchanged a glance. The iPad had been a gift from the child life specialists at the hospital, loaded with games to distract Emma during her treatments. It was one of the few things that could still make her laugh. "Just like that," Mike said, forcing cheerfulness into his voice. "Now, let's get you back to bed. It's still super early." After tucking Emma in, Mike quickly changed into his work uniform, dark blue pants and a light blue shirt with Austin Internet Solutions embroidered on the pocket. The uniform had seen better days, but so had everything else in his life. Sarah met him at the door with his lunch bag. "Mike, I know you're tired. Please be careful today." He pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Always am. I'll try to be home early if the rich folks don't have too many emergencies." The morning air was already thick with humidity as Mike climbed into his service van. The check engine light had been on for months, but that would have to wait, like everything else. His phone buzzed again. Dave sending over the day's assignments. 5 houses in Westlake Hills, Austin's richest neighborhood. The first address made him whistle. "Must be nice," he muttered, plugging the address into his GPS. "Probably some tech CEO who can't figure out where the power button is." The radio crackled to life as he started driving. Some morning show hosts laughing about the latest celebrity gossip. And in tech news, one host said, "Elon Musk's latest Twitter post has everyone talking." Mike switched the station with more force than necessary. Yeah, because that's what matters. Billionaires posting memes while regular people can't afford to keep their kids alive. The morning traffic was light, at least. As he drove, Mike's mind wandered to the stack of bills on their kitchen counter. Hospital bills, pharmacy bills, specialist bills, each one a paper reminder of their desperation. They'd already sold Sarah's car, emptied their savings, maxed out their credit cards. The GoFundMe page Sarah had set up had raised a few thousand from friends and family, but it was a drop in the ocean of what they needed. His phone rang. The hands-free system in the van crackled to life. Rodriguez, Dave's voice filled the car. "You close to the first house?" "About 10 minutes out." "Why?" "Client's been calling every hour since dawn. Says their whole home network is down. These people pay premium rates, so." Yeah, I know. Make 'em happy, keep 'em sweet. Don't mention that turning it off and on again fixes most problems. Dave sighed. Just try to be professional. We need these high-end clients. "When am I not professional?" Mike asked, but Dave had already hung up. The gates of the exclusive community loomed ahead, all wrought iron and limestone. The security guard checked his ID and work order, then waved him through with the kind of dismissive glance Mike had gotten used to in neighborhoods like this. The houses got bigger as he drove deeper into the development. 5-car garages, infinity pools, landscaping that probably cost more than his annual salary. Finally, his GPS directed him to turn onto a private drive. The house at the end made him pause. It wasn't the biggest he'd seen, but something about it was different. Modern, almost stark in its design, with walls of glass and clean lines. Solar panels covered the roof, and several Tesla cars sat in the circular driveway. "Definitely tech money," Mike muttered, parking his van next to a pristine Model S. The contrast between his battered vehicle and the luxury car was almost comical. As he gathered his tools, a housekeeper appeared at the front door. She was an older woman with kind eyes and a slight accent he couldn't place. "You're the internet person?" she asked. "Thank goodness. He's been very frustrated all morning." Mike followed her into the house, taking in the minimalist decor. No family photos on the walls, just modern art and what looked like rocket schematics. The floor was cool concrete, and the ceiling seemed impossibly high. "He's in the office," the housekeeper said, leading Mike down a hallway. "Just be patient, please. He's had a long night." "Aren't we all?" Mike mumbled under his breath. The office door was open. Inside, multiple screens covered one wall, most of them showing graphs and code Mike didn't understand. A tall man in a black t-shirt sat hunched over a keyboard, his messy dark hair sticking up at odd angles. The housekeeper cleared her throat. "Sir, the internet technician is here." The man didn't turn around. "Finally, the network's been down for hours. I've got video calls with teams in 3 countries and nothing's working." The dismissive tone, the entitled attitude, it was all too familiar. Mike had dealt with hundreds of clients like this, people who thought their internet problems were the center of the universe. "I'll take a look," Mike said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Can you tell me when the problem started?" "If I knew that, I wouldn't need you here, would I?" The man's accent was unusual, South African maybe? "Just fix it. I don't have time for 20 questions." Something in Mike snapped. Maybe it was the sleepless night, or the weight of Emma's medical bills, or just years of being treated like he was invisible. Whatever it was, his filter broke. "Sure thing, boss. Though maybe if you spent less time posting memes and more time maintaining your network." The words came out before he could stop them, dripping with sarcasm. The housekeeper gasped. The man at the desk went still, then slowly turned his chair around. Mike's heart stopped. The face that looked back at him was one he'd seen countless times on TV and social media. The same face his coworkers had just been discussing on the radio. He was standing in Elon Musk's home office, and he'd just mocked him to his face. The moment stretched into an eternity as Mike waited for the explosion, for security to appear and drag him out, for his career to end in spectacular fashion. He thought of Emma, of the treatment she still needed, of all the bills they couldn't pay. I'm sorry. I didn't. But before he could finish his apology, something unexpected happened. The corners of Musk's mouth twitched, and then, incredibly, he smiled. Mike's tongue felt like sandpaper. Every survival instinct screamed at him to apologize, to beg for his job, to explain about Emma, anything to fix what he'd just done. But before he could speak, Musk let out a genuine laugh. "Rosa," he called to the housekeeper, "could you bring us some coffee? And maybe those pastries from this morning?" The housekeeper, Rosa, looked as shocked as Mike felt, but she nodded and hurried away. "Sit down," Musk gestured to a chair. "You look like you're about to pass out." Mike lowered himself into the chair, his tool belt suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Mr. Musk, I am so sorry. I had no idea." "That I was the rich asshole you'd be dealing with today?" Musk finished, still looking amused. "Don't apologize. Do you know how many people walk on eggshells around me? It's refreshing to hear someone speak their mind." Mike's phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Dave checking on his progress. He ignored it. "Still," Mike said, "it was unprofessional. I'm not usually." "What? Honest? Let me guess, rough night?" The question caught Mike off guard. "How did you?" "The bags under your eyes could carry groceries," Musk said, turning back to his monitors. "Plus, you have that look I see in the mirror sometimes after coding for 48 hours straight. The world is heavy look." Rosa returned with a tray holding a coffee pot, cups, and what looked like fresh croissants. The aroma made Mike's stomach growl. He'd forgotten to eat the sandwich Sarah packed. "Help yourself," Musk said, typing something rapidly. "And while you're getting caffeinated, maybe you can tell me what's really going on with my network. I've tried rebooting everything twice." Mike took a careful sip of coffee. It was better than anything he'd ever tasted. "When did the problems start exactly?" "Around 3 a.m. I was on a video call with the engineering team in Berlin when everything just died." Mike nodded, setting down his cup. This, at least, was familiar territory. "Mind if I check your main router setup?" "It's all in the server closet down the hall. I'll show you." As they walked, Mike couldn't help but notice the rocket models displayed in glass cases. Some looked like toys, others like professional prototypes. A child's drawing of a spaceship was framed on one wall, signed in crayon, "To Daddy, Love X." The server closet turned out to be bigger than Mike's bedroom at home. Racks of equipment hummed softly, lights blinking in the dim space. "This is impressive," Mike said, scanning the setup. Most homes had a single router. This was more like a small data center. "Probably overkill for a home network," Musk admitted. "But I run most of my work from here when I'm not at the factories." Mike pulled out his diagnostic tablet and started running tests. "These fiber connections are enterprise grade. You could run a small company off this setup." "I run several, actually." Musk leaned against the doorframe, watching Mike work. "So, what's your diagnosis?" Mike traced a cable with his fingers, following it to a junction box. "Ah, here's your problem. One of the main fiber connections is loose, probably from vibration over time. Easy fix, but it would take down your whole network." As Mike worked to repair the connection, his phone buzzed again. This time, he caught a glimpse of the screen. It was Sarah. "You should get that," Musk said. "Could be important." Mike hesitated, then answered, "Sarah, everything okay?" His wife's voice was tight with worry. "Emma's fever is back. I gave her the medication, but, Mike, she's asking for you." Mike's hands started shaking. "I'm in the middle of a job. Is it? How bad is it?" 10 Ardian Sandian, the doctor said to bring her in if it goes above 103. He could hear Emma crying in the background. "I know you can't leave work, I needed to tell someone." "I'll try to finish early," Mike promised, his voice cracking. "Give her a kiss for me. Tell her Daddy loves her." He ended the call and stood there for a moment, trying to compose himself. When he turned around, Musk was staring at him with an unreadable expression. "Your daughter?" he asked quietly. Mike nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He turned back to the fiber connection, blinking rapidly to clear his vision. How old? 6, Mike managed. She's not well. Musk was silent for a long moment. That's a hard age for health problems. I remember when. He trailed off, and something in his voice made Mike look up. The billionaire's face had softened, showing a vulnerability that never appeared in his public photos. The network should be back up, Mike said quickly, desperate to stay professional. I've secured the connection and run a full diagnostic. Everything looks stable now. He began packing up his tools, aware that he'd already spent more time here than any normal service call required. But as he turned to leave, Musk spoke again. You know, most people would have been falling over themselves to apologize or try to network with me. Instead, you focused on fixing the actual problem, even while dealing with whatever's happening with your daughter. Mike shrugged. It's my job. And honestly, after 15 years of service calls, you learn that internet problems don't care how much money someone has. No, Musk said thoughtfully. I suppose they don't. Just like health problems don't care either. Something in his tone made Mike pause. He thought about the child's drawing in the hallway, about the way Musk's voice had changed when talking about difficult ages. Well, Mike said, hefting his tool bag, if there's nothing else. Actually, Musk turned back toward his office. I could use your opinion on something else while you're here. The wireless coverage in my lab area is spotty. Mike checked his watch. He had other appointments waiting, but something told him this wasn't a normal service call anymore. As they walked back toward the office, Mike's phone buzzed with another text from Dave. Status update needed ASAP. This client is top priority. If Dave only knew, Mike thought. If any of them knew that he'd somehow stumbled into this surreal morning, that he'd mouthed off to one of the richest men in the world and somehow hadn't been fired. But none of that mattered. Somewhere across town, his baby girl was burning up with fever, and here he was, walking through a billionaire's house, trying to hold himself together for just a few more hours. The day was about to take an even more unexpected turn, but Mike didn't know that yet. For now, he was just an internet technician, following Elon Musk down a hallway, trying to figure out how his life had become so complicated. And that's when Musk turned around and asked the question that would change everything. What makes someone like you so angry at the world? The question hung in the air between them. Mike's hand froze on his tool belt, his mind racing to process Musk's words. They had just reached the main office again, the morning sun now streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I'm not angry at the world, Mike said carefully, but even he could hear the lie in his voice. Musk dropped into his ergonomic chair, gesturing for Mike to sit as well. Really? Because that comment about memes earlier wasn't just about bad internet. Trust me, I know something about suppressed anger. Rosa appeared silently with fresh coffee and quietly closed the door behind her, leaving them alone. The office felt different now, less intimidating, but somehow more intense. Look, Mr. Musk. Elon, he corrected. After you've insulted someone to their face, you might as well use their first name. Despite everything, Mike felt a small smile tug at his lips. Elon, then. I should really check on my other appointments. They've been reassigned. What? Musk held up his phone. I called your supervisor while you were fixing the fiber connection. Told him I needed you here for the rest of the morning. He seemed eager to accommodate. Mike could imagine Dave's reaction to that call. The thought almost made him laugh, but the worry about Emma gnawed at him. As if reading his mind, Musk added, I also told him you might need to leave suddenly for a family emergency, if necessary. The kindness in that gesture from a man he'd openly mocked made Mike's throat tight. His phone buzzed again, a text from Sarah with Emma's latest temperature reading, 102.5. Still high, but not hospital level yet. So, Musk continued, leaning back in his chair, let's try again. What's really eating at you? Because I don't think it's just rich people and their internet problems. Mike stared into his coffee cup, watching the light play off the dark surface. The events of the morning felt surreal, sitting here, having this conversation with one of the world's richest men. Part of him wanted to maintain his professional distance, to fix the wireless issue and leave. But another part, "You ever feel like the world is designed to break you?" Mike found himself saying, "Like no matter how hard you work, how many hours you put in, how carefully you plan, it's never enough?" Musk's expression shifted, becoming more focused. "Go on." "I've been doing this job for 15 years. I'm good at it, really good. I've saved every penny, lived within my means, done everything right. My wife and I even had a decent savings account." Mike's voice cracked slightly, "and then one doctor's appointment changed everything." "Your daughter," Musk said softly. "It wasn't a question." Mike nodded, the familiar pressure building in his chest. "Emma. She was 3 when they diagnosed her. Rare genetic condition. The kind that makes specialists sit you down with serious faces and talk about quality of life and managing expectations." The office was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers. Outside, birds chirped in the Texas morning, oblivious to the weight of the conversation inside. "Insurance covered the basics at first," Mike continued, the words coming faster now, "but then they started denying the experimental treatments. Said they were unproven or not medically necessary. Have you ever had to explain to a 4-year-old why she can't have the medicine that stops the seizures? Because your insurance company's stockholders need their dividends?" Musk's face had grown increasingly serious. "The healthcare system is broken. I've seen it myself, even with all my resources." "Broken?" Mike let out a bitter laugh. "It's not broken. It's working exactly as designed. Keep the poor poor, keep the sick sick, and make sure everyone stays desperate enough to keep working whatever jobs they can get. Do you know what I did last week?" Musk shook his head. "I sold my wedding ring, got $800 for it. That covered Emma's medications for exactly 2 weeks. Mike's hands were shaking now. My wife doesn't know. She thinks I lost it at work. How's that for the American dream?" "And that's why you hate people like me," Musk said quietly. Mike started to protest, but Musk held up a hand. "It's okay. I get it. From the outside, it probably looks like we're all just playing with rockets and electric cars while the world burns. Isn't that what you're doing?" Instead of answering, Musk stood and walked to one of the framed documents on his wall. It looked like a medical report. "My son, X, was born with complications," he said, his voice different now, harder, more personal. "Even with all my money, all my connections, there were nights I sat in hospital rooms feeling completely helpless. Watching monitors, counting breaths, bargaining with whatever higher power might be listening." He turned back to Mike. "Money doesn't make you immune to fear or pain or the feeling that the universe is personally out to get you. It just gives you more options for fighting back." Mike thought about Emma's smile, how it had dimmed over the years as the treatments took their toll. Options would be nice. Right now, we're running out of everything: money, time, hope. His phone buzzed again. Sarah had sent a photo. Emma curled up on the couch, her favorite stuffed unicorn clutched tight, cheeks flushed with fever. Without thinking, Mike turned the phone so Musk could see. This was 10 minutes ago. "She's probably going to end up in the hospital again, and I'm here fixing internet because we can't afford for me to miss a day's work." Musk studied the photo for a long moment. Something flickered across his face, recognition, maybe, or memory. "You know what the worst part is?" Mike continued, surprising himself with his honesty. "It's not even the money, not really. It's the helplessness. Watching your child suffer and knowing that somewhere, in some lab, there might be a treatment that could help her. But you'll never access it because you're not important enough, not connected enough, not rich enough," Musk finished. "Yeah." Mike slumped in his chair. "I used to think if you worked hard enough, played by the rules, everything would work out. Now I know better. The game is rigged, and people like Emma pay the price." Musk was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at his collection of Tesla cars in the driveway. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. "What if it wasn't?" "Wasn't what?" "Rigged. What if there were people who could change the rules?" Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. "People like you mean?" No offense, but I've heard all about billionaire philanthropy. It makes for great PR, but it doesn't help people like us. We're not photogenic enough, not newsworthy enough. We're just statistics." "You really believe that?" Musk's eyes narrowed. "That all wealthy people are just playing games with charity?" "Aren't they? When was the last time you personally got involved in helping someone who couldn't do anything for you in return?" The challenge hung in the air between them. Mike suddenly remembered who he was talking to and felt his face flush. "I'm sorry, that was out of line." But Musk wasn't angry. Instead, he picked up his phone and began typing rapidly. "What's your daughter's full name?" "What? Why?" "Because," Musk said, still typing, "I'm going to show you how wrong you are about rich people only helping when there's something in it for them." Mike's heart started racing. "Mr. Musk, Elon, you don't have to." "You're right, I don't have to. I want to." He looked up from his phone. "But first, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Tell me everything about Emma's condition. Not the sanitized version you give to strangers. Everything." And so, in that sunlit office, surrounded by evidence of wealth and technological achievement, Mike Rodriguez began to tell the full story of his daughter's illness. He told it like he'd never told anyone before. Not to doctors, not to insurance companies, not even to Sarah. He told it with all the fear and rage and love that had been building for 3 years. As he spoke, Musk listened intently, occasionally asking sharp, detailed questions that revealed a surprising knowledge of genetic conditions. He took notes on his phone, sent messages, and made brief calls in technical language Mike didn't fully understand. The morning stretched on, and somewhere in the telling of Emma's story, something changed in the room. The divide between billionaire and technician, between privilege and struggle, began to blur. In its place, something else emerged, a recognition, perhaps, of shared humanity in the face of life's most brutal challenges. But what happened next would shake Mike's world even further, though he didn't know it yet. For now, he was just a father, telling his daughter's story to someone who, against all odds, seemed to truly care about listening. The conversation was about to take an even more unexpected turn, but that would be part of the next chapter. For now, in that moment, two fathers from vastly different worlds found common ground in the universal language of parental love and fear. And outside, the Texas sun climbed higher in the sky, marking the passage of a morning that had started like any other but would end up changing multiple lives forever. "Sir?" Rosa's voice came through the intercom, interrupting Mike mid-sentence. "Dr. Hansen is on line 1. He says it's regarding your request." Musk pressed a button. "Put him through to my cell. And Rosa, could you bring some lunch? I think we'll be here a while." Mike glanced at his watch. It was almost noon. He'd been talking for over 2 hours. "I should really go." "Your daughter's fever hasn't gone up," Musk said, checking his own phone. "Your wife would have texted." "How did you?" "Because that's what parents do. We check our phones every 5 minutes when our kids are sick." Musk stood up, pacing as he took the call. "James?" "Yes. Thanks for getting back to me so quickly. I'm here with her father now." Mike watched as Musk walked to the window, speaking in low tones. He caught fragments of medical terminology, genetic markers, trial protocols. His heart was pounding. Was this really happening? Rosa entered with a tray of sandwiches and fresh fruit. She gave Mike a warm smile. "He's a good man," she said quietly. "Different than what people think." Before Mike could respond, Musk ended his call and turned back to them. His face was animated, more energized than before. "Dr. Hansen is one of the leading researchers in genetic disorders at Stanford," he explained, grabbing a sandwich. "He's been working on a new treatment protocol that might be relevant to Emma's condition." Mike's throat tightened. "Might be?" "The genetic marker you mentioned, the one that makes Emma's case so rare, he's seen it before. In fact, he's had some success with a similar case in his current trial." The hope that flared in Mike's chest was almost painful. But clinical trials cost money, a lot of money, and the travel, the accommodations. "Mike," Musk's voice was firm, "stop thinking about money for a moment. Just listen." For the next hour, Musk outlined possibilities that Mike had never dared to dream about. Specialists, treatments, research programs, a whole world of medical science that had been locked away behind financial barriers. "But why?" Mike finally asked, his voice rough. "Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us." Musk set down his coffee cup, his expression serious. "Have you ever heard of X's condition when he was born?" Mike shook his head. "The media reported it, but not the details. Not the nights in the NICU. Not the way time seems to stop when the monitors start beeping." Musk's voice grew distant. Money didn't matter then. Power didn't matter. All that mattered was finding someone, anyone, who could help. He pulled out his phone again, showing Mike a photo. It was older, showing a tiny baby in an incubator, surrounded by tubes and wires. "This was X, first week of life," the doctor said. He paused, swallowing hard. "They said to prepare for the worst. But they didn't know how stubborn I could be when it comes to my kids." Mike stared at the photo, seeing echoes of his own experiences in those tubes and monitors. "The thing is," Musk continued, "I had resources. I could call any specialist in the world, fly them in, try experimental treatments. But I always wondered about the other parents in that NICU, the ones who loved their babies just as much but didn't have those options." He took his phone back, staring at the screen for a moment. "X got better. We found treatments, developed new protocols. He's healthy now. But I never forgot that feeling of helplessness, even with all my resources. So when I see another father fighting the same battle..." The office fell silent. Outside, clouds had gathered, casting shifting shadows across the room. "I don't want your pity," Mike said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "Good, because I'm not offering pity." Musk's tone was sharp now. "I'm offering resources, access, the same things I would want if our positions were reversed. The same things any parent would want for their child." Mike's phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely read it. "Emma's fever broke," he said, relief washing over him. "She's asking for lunch." Musk smiled. "That's good, but it's not enough, is it? Because you know it's temporary, that there will be another fever, another crisis, unless something changes." "Nothing changes," Mike said, the old bitterness creeping back. "That's how the world works." "No," Musk leaned forward, his eyes intense. "That's how you think the world works. But sometimes the universe has other plans. Sometimes you fix someone's internet, mouth off to them, and accidentally stumble into a solution you never saw coming." Mike laughed, a sound caught between humor and desperation. "Is that what this is? A cosmic accident? Call it whatever you want. But right now, we're going to make some calls, set some things in motion. And then you're going to go home and hug your daughter and tell her that things are about to get better." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Musk picked up his phone again. "Unless you'd rather keep being angry at the world and all us billionaires?" For the first time that day, Mike felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Real, tangible hope. But with it came fear. Fear of disappointment. Fear of having his dreams crushed again. "I don't know how to thank you," he started, but Musk cut him off. "Don't thank me yet. We've got work to do. But first," he pressed the intercom. "Rosa, we're going to need more coffee, and get me Dr. Patterson at Mayo Clinic on the line. Tell her it's about that pediatric protocol we discussed last month." As Rosa's voice acknowledged the request, Mike sat back in his chair, trying to process everything that had happened. The morning had started with him fixing a loose cable, and now. But the biggest revelations were still to come. The next hour would change everything, not just for Emma, but for how Mike saw the world and his place in it. The confrontation he'd feared had turned into something else entirely, something that would reveal just how wrong he'd been about so many things, including the man sitting across from him. And that revelation was about to begin. Musk's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His eyes scanned the screen quickly, and a small smile formed on his lips. "Found it," he said, more to himself than to Mike. "Found what?" Instead of answering, Musk turned one of his monitors toward Mike. On the screen was a GoFundMe page, Emma's GoFundMe page. The same one Sarah had set up months ago, the one that had raised barely enough to cover 2 weeks of medications. Mike's heart skipped a beat. The photo at the top showed Emma in her hospital bed, managing a brave smile despite the tubes and monitors. Sarah had taken it during their last emergency room visit. "How did you?" "It wasn't hard to find," Musk said, scrolling through the page. "Emma Rodriguez, age 6, rare genetic condition, Austin area. Your wife writes well." The description here, it's powerful. Mike remembered the night Sarah had written that post. She'd sat at their kitchen table after Emma had finally fallen asleep, crying as she typed, trying to find the right words to ask strangers for help. "We raised about $3,000, Mike said quietly, "mostly from family and friends, people who couldn't really afford it but wanted to help anyway." Musk nodded, still reading. "The details about her condition match what you told me, but there's something else here, something you didn't mention." He turned to face Mike directly. "Your daughter's specific genetic marker. It's almost identical to what X had." The words took a moment to register. "What?" "The mutation sequence you described, the way it affects the nervous system, it's remarkably similar. That's why some of these symptoms sounded so familiar." Musk's voice had taken on an intensity Mike hadn't heard before. The seizures, the fever patterns, the resistance to standard treatments. Mike leaned forward, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. But your son got better. You said he's healthy now." "After we found the right treatment protocol. It took months of research, trial and error, collaboration with specialists around the world." Musk ran a hand through his already messy hair. "We developed a custom treatment approach that worked for X's specific genetic profile." "A custom treatment." Mike's voice trailed off as the implications hit him. "That's why you've been making all these calls." Musk nodded. Dr. Hansen at Stanford was part of X's treatment team. So was Dr. Patterson at Mayo Clinic. They've been refining the protocol since then, using it to help other children with similar genetic markers. Mike's mind was racing. But why isn't this more widely known? Why haven't we heard about this treatment? Because it's still experimental. The FDA approval process takes years. And, Musk hesitated, the treatment is extremely expensive. Most insurance companies won't cover it. The familiar weight of despair started to settle back on Mike's shoulders. So we're back to square one. Knowing there's a treatment out there that could help Emma, but being unable to access it. "No." Musk's voice was sharp. "That's not why I'm telling you this." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gathering clouds. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more personal. "When X was sick, I made a promise. Not just to him, but to myself. I promised that if we found a way to help him, I would make sure that help was available to other families facing the same battle." He turned back to Mike. "That's why I set up the foundation. It's not public knowledge. I keep it separate from my other projects. But we've been quietly funding treatment for children with similar genetic conditions." Mike's hands were shaking. "You mean?" "Yes. We can help Emma. Not just with basic treatment, but with the full protocol that helped X. The same team of specialists, the same facilities, the same level of care." The room seemed to spin. Mike felt tears forming in his eyes but couldn't bring himself to care anymore about appearing professional. "I don't understand," he whispered. "This morning, I was fixing your internet, and now you're discovering that sometimes the universe has a strange sense of humor," Musk said, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Of all the service calls, of all the houses in Austin, you ended up here, and you happened to be angry enough to speak your mind, instead of just nodding politely." He sat back down, pulling up another screen on his computer. "The foundation has a facility in Houston. Dr. Patterson is there now, overseeing several cases. I've already spoken to her about Emma." Mike's phone buzzed again, another text from Sarah. Emma's fever was staying down, but she was tired, asking for her daddy. The contrast between his normal world and what was happening in this office felt surreal. "But why?" Mike finally asked. "Why go to all this trouble for us? Just because I fixed your internet?" Musk's expression grew serious. "No, because 3 years ago I was where you are now, scared, desperate, willing to do anything to save my child. The only difference was, I had the resources to do something about it." He turned his monitor so Mike could see it better. On the screen was a medical document, complex charts and diagrams that Mike couldn't understand. "This is X's treatment protocol," Musk explained. "See this genetic sequence here? Now look at Emma's test results from your GoFundMe page." Mike leaned in, and even with his limited medical knowledge, he could see the similarities in the complex patterns of letters and numbers. "The match is almost perfect," Musk continued, "which means the treatment that worked for X has a very high chance of working for Emma." "But the cost," Mike started, "is not your concern?" Musk's tone left no room for argument. "The foundation exists for exactly this purpose. We've helped 12 other families in the past 2 years alone." Mike felt tears running down his cheeks now, but he couldn't stop them. The emotion was too overwhelming, a mixture of hope, gratitude, and lingering disbelief. "I don't know how to," his voice cracked. "You don't have to say anything," Musk said quietly. "Just go home and hug your daughter. Tell her things are going to get better. And maybe," a slight smirk appeared, "maybe rethink your opinion about billionaires and their memes." Mike actually laughed at that, a sound somewhere between a chuckle and a sob. "I still think some of those memes are terrible." "Oh, they absolutely are," Musk agreed. "That's half the fun." Rosa appeared at the door again, her kind face showing both concern and joy. She'd clearly overheard enough to understand what was happening. "Sir, Dr. Patterson is online too, and—" she hesitated. "I took the liberty of having some lunch prepared for Mr. Rodriguez to take home, for his family." Mike was struck by the simple kindness of the gesture, coming on top of everything else. "Rosa's been with us since X was born," Musk explained. "She's seen a lot of families go through what you're experiencing." As if on cue, Mike's phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. "Emma's asking for your grilled cheese. Says hospital food isn't as good as Daddy's." The normalcy of the request, his sick daughter wanting her favorite comfort food, contrasted sharply with the life-changing conversation he'd just had. But there was still more to come. The next few minutes would reveal something that would shake Mike's world even further, though he didn't know it yet. For now, he sat in that sunlit office, trying to process how a simple service call had turned into what felt like a miracle. And outside, the Texas sky was clearing, as if reflecting the hope that had suddenly appeared in what had started as just another difficult day. The real revelation was still to come. "Before I take this call," Musk said, his hand hovering over the phone, "there's something else you need to see." He turned to his computer and pulled up another window. This time, it wasn't medical charts or foundation documents. It was a video. "This was taken 6 months ago," he explained, pressing play. The video showed a hospital room, not unlike the ones Mike had become familiar with, but instead of the harsh fluorescent lighting he was used to, this one was softened by morning sun. A young boy sat on the bed, maybe 7 or 8 years old, playing with what looked like a model rocket. "That's X," Musk said quietly. "This was his last day of treatment." Mike leaned forward, watching as doctors and nurses came in and out of the frame, checking charts and monitors. The boy seemed energetic, healthy, nothing like the tiny infant in the incubator photo he'd seen earlier. "The treatment protocol took 8 months," Musk continued. "There were setbacks, days when we thought we'd made the wrong choices. Nights when," his voice caught slightly, "nights when I sat there wondering if I was being selfish putting him through all of it." The video showed X laughing at something off camera, his face bright with life. "But look at him now," Musk said, pulling up a more recent photo on his phone. It showed X in what looked like a school science fair, proudly standing next to a project about Mars colonization. "He's completely healthy," Mike whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "Better than healthy. He's thriving. The genetic condition that nearly killed him is completely managed. He takes some medications, has regular checkups, but otherwise," Musk smiled, "he's just a normal kid who thinks his dad posts too many bad memes." Mike felt his chest tighten. The possibility of Emma being that healthy, that normal again. "Sir?" Rosa's voice came through the intercom again. "Dr. Patterson is still holding." "Right." Musk picked up the phone but paused before answering. "Mike, what you're about to hear, just listen, okay?" Mike nodded, his heart pounding. "Helen?" Musk spoke into the phone. "Yes, I'm here with him now. Can you pull up the comparison I sent?" He pressed a button, putting the call on speaker. A woman's crisp, professional voice filled the room. "I've reviewed everything you sent, Elon. The genetic marker match is remarkable. Actually, it's one of the closest matches to X's case that we've seen." Mike felt his hands start to shake again. "What are Emma's chances?" Musk asked directly. "Based on these markers and her current age, I'd say excellent. Better than X's, actually, because we've refined the protocol since then. We've learned so much from each case." Mike couldn't hold back anymore. "Dr. Patterson, this is Emma's father." "Mr. Rodriguez." Her voice softened slightly. "I've been reviewing your daughter's medical history. I have to ask, how has she survived this long without specialized treatment?" Mike's voice cracked. "We did everything we could, every treatment we could afford, every medication." "You've done remarkably well with limited resources," Dr. Patterson said. "But now we can do better, much better." Musk leaned forward. "How soon can we start?" "I can clear a space in the program immediately. We'll need to run some additional tests, but assuming everything matches what we're seeing in these reports." She paused. "Mr. Rodriguez, I know this is overwhelming, but I want you to understand something. What you've been hoping for, praying for, it exists. And thanks to Elon's foundation, it's available to Emma." Mike couldn't speak. The tears he'd been holding back were flowing freely now. "Helen," Musk said, "send over all the paperwork. I want everything ready by tomorrow, and make sure the family has accommodations near the facility." "Already on it. The apartment we keep for foundation families is available." There was a smile in Dr. Patterson's voice. "Mr. Rodriguez, how soon can you and your family be ready to come to Houston?" The question snapped Mike back to reality. I need to talk to my wife. My job." "Your job is secure," Musk cut in. "I've already spoken to your supervisor. Full paid leave, as long as needed." "But..." "Mike," Musk's voice was firm, "stop thinking about logistics. That's what the foundation is for. Your only job right now is to focus on Emma." Dr. Patterson spoke again. "Mr. Rodriguez, I know this is a lot to process, but time is important with this condition. The sooner we can start the protocol." "Yes," Mike said quickly, finding his voice. "Yes, we'll be ready, whatever Emma needs." "Good. I'll have my team send over all the details within the hour. And Mr. Rodriguez?" Her voice softened again. "Get ready for some good news, for a change." After they ended the call, the office fell silent. Mike sat there, trying to process everything that had happened. In the span of a few hours, his world had completely shifted. "I don't know how to thank you," he finally managed. "Then don't," Musk said simply. "Just promise me something. Anything. When Emma's better, and she will be better, remember this day. Remember that sometimes the world isn't as dark as we think it is. And maybe," he smiled slightly, "be a little gentler with the next billionaire whose internet you fix." Mike actually laughed, even as tears continued to run down his face. "I think I can manage that." "Good. Now," Musk stood up, "I believe you have a little girl waiting for her daddy's famous grilled cheese." But before Mike could leave, there was one final revelation coming. One that would shake him to his core and bring this extraordinary day to an even more extraordinary conclusion. As Mike gathered his tools, preparing to leave the office that had changed his life, Musk held up his hand. "Wait, there's one more thing you need to see." Mike paused, his tool belt half fastened. What more could there possibly be after everything that had happened? "Rosa," Musk called through the intercom, "could you bring in that file I asked you to prepare?" A moment later, Rosa entered carrying a thick manila envelope. Her eyes were slightly red, as if she'd been crying too. "The special one, sir?" she asked softly. Musk nodded, taking the envelope. "Mike, sit down for this, please." Something in his tone made Mike's heart skip. He lowered himself back into the chair he'd occupied for the past few hours. "Before I show you what's in here," Musk said, holding the envelope, "I need to tell you about something we haven't discussed yet. Something about the Foundation." Mike noticed Musk's hands were trembling slightly, the first sign of nervousness he'd seen from the billionaire all day. The treatment protocol that saved X? It wasn't just about the medical procedures. It was about something bigger. Musk opened the envelope slowly. "We discovered that children with this genetic marker, they're special." "Special?" Mike's throat felt dry. "What do you mean?" "The same genetic sequence that causes the health problems? It's linked to something else, something we didn't understand at first." Musk pulled out a series of photographs. "These are brain scans of children before and after the treatment protocol." He laid them out on the desk. Mike leaned forward, seeing colorful images that meant nothing to his untrained eye. "In every case," Musk continued, "once the health issues were stabilized, we noticed something extraordinary. These children didn't just recover, they thrived in ways we never expected." He pointed to specific areas on the scans. "See these regions? They show unusual activity patterns, patterns we've only seen in." "In what?" "In people with exceptional cognitive abilities, specifically in areas related to pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, and creative problem-solving." Mike stared at the images, trying to understand. "Are you saying?" "X wasn't just cured by the treatment," Musk said quietly. "He changed. His mind. It's like it was unlocked. He's reading at a college level now. Solving complex mathematical problems for fun. Understanding concepts that children triple his age struggle with." He pulled out more documents from the envelope. "And it wasn't just X. Every child who's gone through the protocol has shown similar developments. Different areas, different strengths, but all exceptional." Mike's head was spinning. "But why? How?" "We think the genetic marker is like a double-edged sword," Musk explained. "It causes these health problems, yes, but it's also linked to enhanced neural development. The problem was, children couldn't access these abilities while their bodies were fighting the condition. The treatment doesn't just heal them, it frees their minds to develop in extraordinary ways." He spread out more papers, test results, evaluation reports, progress charts. Each showed remarkable developments in children who had gone through the protocol. One girl in the program is composing symphonies at age 8. Another is designing renewable energy systems. A boy in Houston is developing new computer programming languages. Mike's hands were shaking as he looked at the documents. "And Emma, you think she?" "Based on her genetic profile? Yes." Musk's voice was firm. "The potential is there. All she needs is a chance to heal, to grow, to become who she's meant to be." Mike remembered all the times he'd watched Emma solve puzzles meant for much older children, even while sick, how she seemed to understand things without being taught. The way she could look at complex patterns and instantly see connections that others missed. "But why?" Mike had to stop, compose himself. "Why are you telling me this now?" Musk stood and walked to the window, his back to Mike. "Because you need to understand what's really at stake here. This isn't just about saving Emma's life, though that alone would be enough. It's about giving her the chance to become something extraordinary." He turned back, his face intense. "The Foundation isn't just a medical charity, it's an investment in the future. These children, they could change the world. They already are, in their own ways." Mike looked down at the papers spread across the desk, his vision blurring with tears. I just want her to be healthy, to have a normal life." "She'll be healthy," Musk promised. But normal? I don't think that was ever in the cards for Emma, not with this genetic profile, not with what we've seen in other children like her. He sat back down, leaning forward. "That's why I need you to understand something. When Emma gets better, and she will get better, her journey won't be over. It will just be beginning. And I want the foundation to be there for all of it." "What do you mean?" "Full support. Not just medical care, but education, resources, opportunities to develop whatever abilities emerge. The same things we're doing for X and the other children." Mike couldn't speak. The magnitude of what was being offered, not just healing for Emma, but a future he'd never dared to imagine. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "This isn't about deserving," Musk said firmly. "It's about potential, about not letting arbitrary things like money or access stand in the way of what these children might become." He pulled one final document from the envelope. "This is a formal agreement. It guarantees Emma's place in the program, not just the medical treatment, but everything that comes after. Full funding, full support, for as long as she needs it." Mike stared at the paper. His vision, too, blurred to read it. "All you have to do," Musk said softly, "is trust that the universe sometimes knows what it's doing. That maybe, just maybe, your angry comment about my memes this morning was part of something bigger than both of us." Mike laughed through his tears. "I still think some of those memes are terrible." "They are," Musk agreed, smiling. "But they got you to speak your mind, didn't they? And look where that led." He pushed the agreement across the desk. "So what do you say, Mike? Ready to let Emma change the world?" Mike picked up the pen with trembling fingers. As he signed his daughter's future into existence, he thought about all the nights he'd spent praying for a miracle. He just never expected that miracle to start with a loose internet cable and a sarcastic comment about memes. "Thank you," he whispered, but the words felt inadequate. "Don't thank me," Musk said, standing. "Thank Emma. She's the one who's going to do amazing things. We're just opening the door." As Mike finally left the office that had changed his life, he felt lighter than he had in years. His phone buzzed one last time, another text from Sarah. "Emma's feeling better. She says she had a dream about flying to Mars. Silly girl." Mike smiled, knowing something Sarah didn't yet, that maybe, just maybe, that dream wasn't so silly after all. And somewhere above them, the Texas sun shone brightly, as if celebrating the extraordinary events of an ordinary morning that had changed not just one life, but potentially the world itself. Because sometimes miracles don't come with fanfare and flashing lights. Sometimes they start with a simple service call, a moment of honesty, and the discovery that the universe has a plan all its own.